Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the module number 2 of the Sales Masterclass. I do want to say just two things before we get started. One is that many people had asked about the original Masterclass. It's a 16-hour video course, 16-hour audio course, and includes with it a teaching from a live seminar that I did with Holly Lanesmith, where we taught the system, and a complete workbook. So if you would like to get that piece of content, it's a $500 investment. You have lifetime access to 16 hours of all of the teaching of the entire system, and a video recording of I think it's probably a 2 or 3 hour presentation that Holly and I did in front of a live audience, as well as the workbook. So that's available to you if you didn't want to make the full investment to jump into the mastermind weekend boot camp. So let me go ahead and take us through. We'll get the legal stuff out of the way first, saying that everything here is copywritten, and let's jump in. Okay, so let's talk about what we looked at last week. So last week we defined sales, and we said, what is sales? We said, well, the sales at its highest level is the transference of emotion. And the primary emotion that's being transferred is certainty. I think the important part here for you to really understand is that the buyer, the prospect, has to have certainty in 3 things. They have to have certainty in you. They have to have certainty in the product or the service or program. And they have to have certainty in the company. If they fail to have certainty in any of those 3 areas, they're going to throw you a smoke screen. And that smoke screen will be what we call an objection. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. Let me check with my wife. Let me think about it. All of those objections are really the same. And if you don't build massive certainty in the prospect, and you overcome one of those objections, up will pop another objection. So it's not about resolving an objection, it's about building certainty. Okay? Now, in order to build certainty, that buyer has to get it from somewhere. The prospect has to get certainty from somewhere. So the transference of certainty is being transferred from you. The only place your prospect can get certainty is from you. So that means everything you say and everything you do from the beginning of the engagement, whether that engagement is a Facebook ad or a webinar like this or an email, right from the very first moment, your prospect is looking in their subconscious mind and saying, does this feel right to me? And the minute that it doesn't feel right, they begin to break what we call rapport. And so we said, rapport is key. So we said that rapport is not commonality. It's not that you went to a certain high school and I went to that same school, or you grew up in a city and I went to that city, or you vacationed in Rome and I vacationed in Rome. That's commonality. That's not rapport. We identified rapport as having kind of authority in a dynamic relationship, where one person is the originator and the other person is the subject. You think of a relationship of a teacher, a student, a parent, a child, a doctor and a patient, right? Where one person clearly is the authority figure. And remember, this is not force or power. This just means that there's going to be a certain level of respect given to the person who's the originator. And it's critical. And it's not established by commonality. Let's face it, we can have lots of things in common with people, but not see them as an authority figure or not see them as an expert. It's not even about liking someone. It's not even about liking someone. Now, obviously, all things being equal, we want to be a likable expert. But liking someone alone, how many times, if you think about it, how many times have you gone in, had a sales meeting with someone, and the meeting went fantastic? You were fast friends. You leave the meeting thinking, wow, this is a done deal. me and Mary, me and Jim really hit it off. And then they tell you, let me think about it. And then you try to follow up and they become Casper, the friendly ghost. They're still friendly, but they're a ghost, never to be heard from again. And you think, well, like, what went wrong? I don't understand. We like, I was killing it in the meeting. They were laughing at all of my jokes. That's not rapport. Rapport is establishing authority. So we talked about there's strategies to maintaining rapport. And we said the use of keywords, phrases, and language patterns are critical. That's probably your secret weapon of rapport is the use of language, words, phrases, and language patterns. But these really have to be scripted because you can't risk defaulting to a word that might break rapport or a pattern that might break rapport. We also said that use of varying tonalities, how we say these words, because we're really speaking to the emotional mind of the person. The emotional mind of the person is where all the vibrational frequencies are stored for all of our beliefs, all of our concepts, all of our thoughts, all of our habits. And so we want to have a tonality that will spark emotion. Then we said we want to speak with confidence and certainty about what we're offering. We want to bring attention to the pain and the pleasure, but we really want to focus on the pain when we're uncovering the problem that our prospect has or the opportunity in front of them that they may not be equipped or resourced to take advantage of without your expertise. That's a problem for them. And so we really we said we want them to sit in the pain for a little while. We don't want to resolve the issue right away because we want them to understand the consequence of not doing business with us. We talked about this idea of active listening, and we said that there were verbal cues that we could give. We also talked about harnessing the power of strategies like the use of the word because to get kind of compliance. We mentioned not allowing any tangents. We said, don't go to Pluto. And this is when you're in a conversation with a prospect and the prospect begins to go off on a tangent, talking about something outside of your sales presentation. You need to immediately get them back into the channel of rapport. Or worse yet, when the sales professional goes off script. And this is why if you don't have a script, it's real easy for a conversation to go off on a tangent, off to Pluto. See, the danger of that is that subconsciously the person thinks, maybe what they're trying to sell me, maybe their solution really isn't that important if they're willing to take 5 minutes of my time and talk about their vacation in Vail or talk about the football game. Remember, it's not about commonality. We said we want to dress for success, that even if we're over the phone, how we dress affects our physiology. Our physiology affects our breathing, it affects our tonality, it affects our attitude. We said we want to be specific when we schedule follow-up. Right? We don't want wandering generalities. Hey, I'll call you next week. We want a specific time. And we said that we want to intentionally and strategically make a commitment to our prospect and then follow through on that commitment. So this would be us saying that we're going to send them some information at a specific date, at a specific time, and we actually do it. It allows us to keep that person in the channel of rapport when we're not in front of them and build trust. Okay. So we said that sales here is a process, right? Sales is a process, and no true process involves luck or chance, right? No process implemented but by winging it or making it up as you go along. The worst thing you can do in a sales presentation. You want to really understand who you're going to be meeting with. You want to understand what your value is, what they value, and the value of them doing business with you. And you want to have scripted language patterns that make a solid logical and emotional case for them doing business with you. So in a system, or process, there are no free words. There's no free steps. And everything matters. Again, what we're looking for is to gain a predictable outcome. And if we want to have a predictable outcome, then we're going to have to follow an exact model. So the use of a script is the only guaranteed way to keep rapport. Now, here's something really interesting if you think about it. Statistically, you increase your sales closing ratio by 73% just by using a script. So for all of you, here's an idea. I asked you last week to use some of the techniques of rapport this past week and see if it didn't make a difference. And on our call last week where we had open Q&A, we had a couple hundred people on that call. Many people said that they had tried using some of the techniques of rapport and had some success. Here's something that you can do. Is if you have a sales presentation or a first meeting or just an opportunity to talk to someone about what you do this week, take 5 or 10 minutes and just script out an opening, a quick sales presentation, 1 or 2 features and benefits about your company, about your offering. I'll talk more about this today when we talk about painting the 4 corners. Just by having that, you're going to increase the likelihood of closing that person by 73%. And if you think about it, it makes sense because your confidence level, your level of certainty is going to go up. And when your level of certainty goes up, then you can transfer certainty to your prospect. So we're going to take you through the sales model. You might want to wait till I get to the very end, and I'll let you know when you should take a screenshot, okay? So there's the first 4 seconds. The opening, the intelligence gathering, the declaration of certainty, the first sales presentation, asking for the order, then deflecting the expected and welcomed objection, looping into the second sales presentation, rebutting the next expected and welcome welcome objection, building emotional certainty, and then entering in the third loop, and then lastly, going for the close or lowering what we call the action threshold. Go ahead and you can screenshot this now because this is the system. This is the process. For those of you who are coming in for the mastermind 2-day boot camp and going through all the pre-training that we have for you, we're going to take you through each one of these pieces of the system, and we're going to give you a scripted piece so that you can take your prospect from the very beginning to the end of this process. So again, there's scripted language patterns for each and every one of the steps to guarantee a predictable result. So the first 4 seconds, and we talked about this all last week, right? Which is building rapport, right? So these are the building blocks of your script. So what I'm saying is that in every sales conversation, you have to have a script. So let's talk about what are the building blocks of the script. And so the first building block here is somebody is drawn on the screen, it looks like, is the first 4 seconds. So this is the introduction of the interaction, right? This is the introduction of the interaction. It's the establishment of rapport. And so it sounds something like this. Hey, Mary, this is Paul with Empowered Mentoring. How's it going today? Now, we're going to talk more next week. We're going to look at all of the 9 tonalities, and we're going to have some of our sales team come in and share with you how to use these different tonalities. But you'll notice something's going on here. So this is me on the phone with Mary, and I'm saying, hey, Mary, this is Paul. But I'm not saying, hey, Mary, this is Paul. That's a declaration. Hey, Mary, this is Paul. I'm saying, hey, Mary, this is Paul. It sounds like a question, doesn't it? Hey, Mary, this is Paul with Empowered Living. How's it going today? And there's a shift in that tonality. So the first 2 sentences have this upswing. Hey, Mary, this is Paul with Empowered Living. How's it going today? And the last tonality is that I really want to know, like, I really want to know, how's it going today? Why would we be asking Mary a question about my name? Hey, Mary, this is Paul with Empowered Living. Why would we do that? Well, the reason why we would insert a tonality of questioning here is because as adult learners, we never want to be caught off guard, do we? We never want to be seen as not being in the know. And so if I can get my prospect to make a micro agreement right in the very beginning. So if I'm asking like, hey, Mary, this is Paul. When somebody asks you a question, you begin to search for an answer, thinking, Paul, I should know Paul. From Empowered Living, I should know Empowered Living. And rather than Mary defaulting to, I don't know, because there's not a big consequence in her saying, oh, like she's familiar with me, she'll make a small micro agreement and say, oh, yeah, yes. In her mind, yes. And that's how I want to start building rapport. Any one of these things seems very insignificant. But remember last week, or actually, it was actually on the Q&A, during the Q&A last week, I had asked Holly Lanesmith to talk a little bit about stacking tonalities. And she did an excellent job in answering that. And again, any one of these seem to be insignificant, but when you stack the tonalities one on top of the other, you're building this logical and emotional case for this person to begin to follow and play their role as the subject in this dynamic relationship. So we're building on last week's lesson. So we have our first 4 seconds. Now we go into what we call the opening. And so in the opening of your script, this is the statement of purpose for the engagement, right? This is the point where you share the clearly defined intention and the reason for the interaction with your prospect. This is really critical. This will set the tone. You're saying, this is why I'm calling. And again, we're going to use what we call the man of mystery tonality in this one. So it's, now Jim, or Mary, now Mary, the reason for the call. Now, Jim, the reason for the call. So there's a drop. The reason for the call is that you requested some information, or you responded to a Facebook ad, or you filled out a form, whatever it is. We're going to start with the reason for the call. So it starts with, hey, hey, Jim, this is Paul with Empowered Living. How's it going today? It's going great. Great. Now, the reason for the call, and I'm going to just lower my voice just a little bit. Again, remember we talked about the kind of tools that we can use. We talked about this last week, or delivery systems of these tools. We said there was shock, fascination, and agreement. That if we can use shock, fascination, or agreement, we can bypass the logical mind and enter into the subconscious mind. So by dropping our tonality just a little bit, by saying the reason for the call just shifts the energy. It keeps Jim or Mary, the prospect, wondering what's next. It engages them at a level that they otherwise wouldn't if you were just declaring, hey, the reason I wanted to follow up with you is because, versus, hey, the reason for the call. Now, the reason for the call, there's a strategy here. And again, any one of these things seems insignificant, but when you stack one on top of the other, when they begin to compound, you begin to build certainty. So now we've established rapport in those first 4 seconds. We've made an opening statement is the reason for the call. So why should you be listening to me? And now we're going to enter the prospect into intelligence gathering. Perhaps the most important thing you'll do. You're going to qualify your buyer here. If during the intelligence gathering, at any point during the intelligence gathering, you don't feel that you're speaking to a qualified buyer, then it's time for you to end the call. What's a qualified buyer? Well, somebody who can't pay would if they don't have the money, then they're not a qualified buyer. Somebody who doesn't need the service, somebody who doesn't need the program that you're selling. If they don't have a need for the program, then why are you trying to sell them something they don't need? That doesn't serve them. That breaks rapport, right? So let's take a look at this. So intelligence gathering is your opportunity to build massive rapport. And it's the stage of the conversation where you're going to uncover the problem. You're going to uncover their problem. Critically important. And as you uncover their problem, you're going to find out what the pain of the problem is. What is having this problem causing Jim or Mary today? Not being able to have good communication in the office, not being able to understand how to, implement a marketing strategy if you sell marketing services, not having a dependable car if you're selling cars. That's the problem. And there's a pain to that. What's the pain of that? You can miss work, you can lose your job, right? So what we want to do in this intelligence gathering is we want to go from the least invasive questions to the most invasive questions. So what least invasive questions might be some of those questions around commonality. Hey, where'd you grow up? How did you get into this business? How long ago did you start? Those kinds of things. And then maybe a more invasive question is, what's the most amount of money you've ever invested in a program like this? Or, will you share with me, some of the other solutions you've implemented that haven't worked? I have to earn the right to be able to ask that kind of question. I can't ask that question when I first start. I'll break rapport. So I'm going from the least invasive to the most invasive question. You should have at least 12 scripted questions so that you're able to adapt to the personality style and maintain rapport. 12 scripted questions. And so, you want to have 4 or 5, questions that might be least invasive. You might want to have 3 or 4 questions about where they are on their journey. You might want to have 3 or 4 questions about, what has worked and what hasn't worked. What have they tried up until now? You might want to have a couple of questions about money and how they would fund this next project. Once we have the intelligence gathering, and now we've established rapport, we've given Jim or Mary the reason for the call, we've asked a series of questions that uncover the problem and the pain, and through asking those questions, and this is critical, through asking those questions, we've made sure that Jim and Mary are acutely aware of the problem they have, right? We don't want to just become aware of their problem. We want to make sure that when we're asking these questions in a certain way with the right tonality that are scripted, that Jim or Mary feel really uncomfortable about their problem. Like, this really is a big problem. I'm glad I'm talking to this professional. I'm glad I'm talking to this expert. This expert seems to be a light of hope for me. And isn't it interesting that we're building that kind of emotional state not from telling Jim or Mary anything, but by asking the right questions at the right time with the use of the right language patterns in the right tonality. This is why, if you're taking notes, write this down. Selling is not telling. Selling is not telling. Now we're going to make what we call a declaration of certainty. And now this is where we've now asked Jim or Mary all about the information that we think we need to know in order for us to properly guide them through making a decision. Isn't that really what you're trying to do? You're trying to transfer the emotion of certainty so that Jim or Mary can make a decision that they should be making in their life and no longer delaying that decision. And so now we're going to make a declaration of certainty. And this is a transition point in the sales presentation. So tonality and the right use of words is critical. So it would sound something like this: Mary, based on everything you shared with me today, you're definitely a perfect fit. Mary, based on everything you shared with me today, you're definitely a perfect fit. So I'm going to go from kind of a friendly tonality, based on everything you share with me today, you're definitely a perfect fit. Notice I can't even do it without moving do you notice my hand gestures? You can see my physiology changes. You see how I lean in because I'm acting out the tonality. You're definitely a perfect fit. This like I'm pointing, right? You can just see there's a level of intensity, but it's subtle. It's subtle. you're definitely a perfect fit. That would be a tonality of absolute certainty. Again, next week, we're going to guide you through all the different tonalities, really break them down, and have some members of our sales team just really show you how a pro would do this. Okay. So now we've said, we've gathered intelligence. We've said, you're a perfect fit for the program. Now we're going to enter into what we call the first presentation. Remember, in the model I'm showing you now, I'm taking you up to 3 presentations. And there's a strategic reason why we're going to do 3. Because this first presentation is almost sacrificial. In other words, we know that at this point in time, Jim or Mary probably do not have enough certainty in order to say yes yet. We know that. And because we know that, we're going to manage this sales presentation in a really elegant, strategic way. It's almost a throwaway presentation. Now, it'll be the foundation of everything, but we don't really expect Jim or Mary to have absolute certainty about me, about my program, and about my company yet. It's just too early in the process. Now, here's the surprising thing is maybe 2 or 3% of the people you speak to will actually just say, I'm ready to go. And you'll be like, well, okay. And those people, look, there's some people who are just absolutely looking to buy, right? Like if I walk into a shoe store, I'm walking out with shoes because I'm never walking into a shoe store to shop. If I'm a buyer when I show up, I'm a buyer. I'm not, very rarely am I looking around, but there's times where people are looking around. They have a need, they've got a problem. They don't believe they're ready yet to make the decision. You're going to persuade them and influence them to make the decision to solve their problem now through a really well executed sales strategy. But there's other people who walk in and they're absolutely ready to buy. But if you do everything right up until this point, it's really important for you to know that probably 97% of the people are gonna say no or maybe or give you some smokescreen for certainty, which we will call an objection. So now, the first sales presentation we call painting the 4 corners. So what we're doing in this presentation is we're establishing logical certainty, right? Remember, we said people don't buy because of logic. They don't buy something because it makes sense. They buy something because it makes them feel good. There's an emotional appeal to it. People buy on emotion and they justify the decision with the logic. So you have to have, remember, we said this is the foundation. There has to be some logical certainty of why this makes sense. Remember, I gave kind of the example of, the guy who goes into the Corvette store having a midlife crisis and walks out with a shiny new yellow Corvette and pulls into the driveway at home and, explains to the wife how great the gas mileage is on the car, or, how great the safety features are on the car. That's the logical justification for buying this $85,000 shiny, bright yellow new car that he's always wanted since he was 12 years old, right? He's buying it on an emotional appeal and he's justifying it logically. So we have to give the buyer those logical reasons. So we're going to establish this by painting the 4 corners. Here's something that's really interesting. 60% of all sales are lost right here. They're lost right here. And the reason why is because the salesperson is unscripted and they give way too much information and the person goes off to Pluto. In other words, in this first sales presentation, where we know no matter how good we were, the likelihood of that person being able to have certainty this early in the game to say yes is slim to none. And if we give them all of the information, if we talk about all the features and all the benefits, and everything there is to know about our product in this front presentation. If we front end load this, when they give us an objection, which we know we're going to get, all we're going to do is repeat what we've already said. And we're going to try to convince them with something that we've already said. We've got nothing new to say. So what we want you to do is follow this model. We want you to paint the four corners. So we want you to share something, a feature or a benefit about your product or service. Just one. Just one. We don't need to give them the full load yet. Then what we want to do is we want to give them some information about the company. Then we want to give them some information about us, about who we are. And then we want to give them a little bit of information about something that's unique about what we're offering. Is there a proprietary system? Is there some statistic? Is there some tool? Or is there something unique that maybe they haven't considered or heard about of what your product is? This is why scripted language patterns with the right tonalities will set you up for success. Otherwise, what you're going to do is you're going to try to say, let me speak to all the problems that they mentioned in the intelligence gathering. Let me try to solve it all on the front end. And then when you're all done and say, are you ready to buy? When you're ready to go to this next phase where you ask for the order, they're going to say, yeah, no, let me think about it. Or, well, I don't have the money, or that looks good, but I think I want to shop around. And what more can you say? You've said everything. So now we're going to paint the four corners. We're going to give them enough information to build logical certainty. We're keeping them in this channel of rapport, but we know that they're likely not going to buy the product at this point, and that's okay. As a matter of fact, we welcome it. So now we're going to kind of ask for the first order. And what we're going to do is we're going to use one of 6 scripted closing statements, okay? And so there's one statement I've included here. It's called the "it's really easy" closing statement. It's really easy. And it sounds something like this. As you see, Jim, the program really is a perfect fit. And I can get you started today with an easy payment of, I can get you started with a deposit of, it's real easy. It's just a real easy payment. And so this is a really simple. Notice that I'm not necessarily asking Jim to buy anything. This is a fairly directive statement. As you see, Jim, the program really is a perfect fit. It really is a perfect fit. And I can get you started with an easy payment of $500, and you can make the rest of the payments, monthly. Fair enough? So I'm using this kind of reasonable man tonality, starting with this kind of authoritative declarative statement. As you see, Jim, the program really is a perfect fit. And I can get you started today with this easy payment of $500. Fair enough? Right? So that's the first kind of closing statement that I'm going to use. It's one of 6 that will take you through in the boot camp. And you will have each one of these scripted and designed specifically for your product, for your program, for your company. So we're going to expect Jim or Mary to say no. So when we say, fair enough, we ready to get started today, he's going to say no. He's likely going to say no, or he's going to give us an objection. Well, let me think about it. I'm not ready to make a decision today. As I said earlier, I'm just looking. I have to check with the board. Let me talk to my wife. Let me speak with my husband. Let me talk to the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, whoever it is that they need to get some okay from. But in fact, what we want to do is we want to celebrate the fact that they've given us an objection, because they're reading their part of the script. We know they're supposed to say no. As a matter of fact, we set them up to say no. And the reason we set them up to say no is right now we can kind of take their temperature. If we're actively listening and we paint the four corners and we go in with it's really easy closing statement and we'll listen, we'll be able to see how hesitant are they? How much certainty do they really have? And that first smokescreen of uncertainty, that first objection, will really help us know, is this a money issue? Is this a delay issue? Is this a confusion issue? Do they really just need more information? And if they do, what area of my presentation might they need more information? Is it about the features and benefits? Is it about me? Is it about the company? Hey, sometimes people love the product, they love the company, but they're not sure about you yet. And so you have to continue to build certainty. So we welcome this because it gives us an opportunity to continue to sell. So now, what do? We've done the intelligence gathering, and now we've made this great declaration. Jim, based on everything you share with me, you're a perfect fit for the program. And here's why. Here's a feature of our program. Here's something about our company. Here's something about me. Here's something really unique that separates us from all the competition. What do you think, Jim? Based on everything I shared, we can get you started with a really simple, easy first payment of $500. Sound fair enough? And then Jim or Mary says what they're supposed to say. No. Or, you know what? Let me just think about it. So what do we do when we get this? It'll let me think about it. Well, rather than answer or speak to the objection, whatever that objection is, we're going to almost ignore it as though we didn't even hear it. We call it deflecting. So what we're going to do is we're going to deflect the expected and welcomed objection. Why am I hammering on this idea that's an expected and welcomed objection? I'll tell you why. Because when you hear it, you won't go, oh, I just lost the sale. Remember, it's all about certainty. And if you're not expecting and actually welcoming the objection that we know you're going to get at this point in the presentation, simply because it's too early, it's just, this first presentation, this painting of the four corners, it's a sacrificial, pop-up fly, right? We just want to see how everybody's going to respond here. We want to see what Mary or Jim's going to respond. How much level of certainty do they have? Do I still have rapport? What might be, what's going on in their head? What might be some of their objection, right? And so we welcome it so that when we do hear it, we don't lose our posture. We don't go into scarcity mode and immediately start giving the store away and say, well, we can do it for half the price, or, I'll give you a bonus. Or we don't break rapport by trying to convince them. It's the worst thing you can do, is to convince somebody. Try to convince somebody. I'm convinced you can't convince anybody. So what we're going to do is we're going to deflect. And essentially, in deflecting, what are we doing? Well, we're de-escalating the prospect's objection. And we're doing that through the use of micro agreements. I'll go back and share with you. Remember, last week, we said that there were kind of 3 processes to gaining access to the subconscious mind. Remember what they were? Shock, fascination. Who remembers the next one? Agreement. And we said that there's 2 types of agreement: an explicit agreement and a micro agreement. And you will have hundreds of little micro agreements through this entire process. That's why scripting is important, is because we want to build enough micro agreements. Micro agreements equal certainty to get an explicit agreement. So what we're going to do is we're going to deflect it using a tool or a strategy of micro agreements. And so it sounds like this. So you painted the 4 corners. You've said, you're a perfect fit for the program. Let's get you started with a really easy, simple, blah, 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 closing statement. Jim or Mary are following the script, and they're saying, well, you know what? I just don't think we're ready yet. It's not seasoned. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to say, I hear what you're saying, Mary, but let me ask you this. Does the idea make sense to you? Like, do you like the idea? These are brilliant questions, and I'll tell you why. Because chances are, if you've established rapport and you've qualified the buyer, the ideas absolutely make sense. They absolutely make sense. And unless you've got some far out presentation that makes no sense, the idea is going to make sense. And what is the consequence of Jim or Mary saying yes to this question? You're not asking her to buy the farm. You're not asking her to make a buying decision. You're just saying, hey, look, I hear what you're saying, but let me ask you this. I hear what you're saying. Okay, I got it. Now let me just ask you this. Does the idea make sense to you? Do you like the idea? Really, there's no big consequence in Mary saying, yeah, I like the idea. And she is probably 99% likely, if you've done your job correctly, which is qualify her. And what qualifies her? That she has a problem that you can solve and that she has a need for what you have. That's the basis of a qualification. Okay. So Mary's going to say, yeah, I like it. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. And then you're going to say, exactly, because it really is a great opportunity. And what's even better is, I haven't talked about her objection at all. I haven't talked about her having to go to the board. I haven't talked about money. I haven't talked to her about talking to her husband or thinking about it. Not at all. I've deflected the entire thing. I hear what you're saying, Mary, but let me ask you this. Does the idea make sense to you? Do you like the idea? Yeah, I like the idea. Exactly. Now, notice the word exactly. Again, it's a scripted word. Exactly. It's not kind of, it's not sort of. What is it? It's exact. If you wanted to build certainty, you'd want things to be exact, wouldn't you? I mean, if they aren't exact, you might not have certainty. So even the use of that word, it's subtle. It's subtle. And you think, oh, come on, that it doesn't matter. Okay. Maybe it doesn't matter on slide number 46 in this deck. I'll give you that one. But in a full sales presentation where you're building logical and emotional certainty, that word has weight. Exactly, because it is a great opportunity. Now, I've used the word great here. Mary said she likes it. What I'm going to try to do is the choice of word between good or great is really important. I'm going to want to kind of go one or two steps kind of above Mary's energy. So Mary says, yeah, I like it. So yeah, because it is a good idea. I don't want to match her energy. I want to go above her energy. Why? This is a dynamic relationship. I'm the originator. I don't want her to start originating the conversation. I don't want her energy dictating the rest of this conversation. So I'm going to say exactly. So I'm making agreement with her. Like, you're right, Mary, right on. This really is a good idea. This really does. Exactly. This makes absolute sense because it really is a great opportunity. And what's even better is, and now I'm able to go into what we call the second loop. Now I'm going to go in and make another sales presentation. What's going to be different about this presentation? Well, in this second loop, I'm going to paint more of the picture. I'm going to begin to paint in some more of these features and benefits. I'm going to begin to continue to build logical and emotional certainty. But now I'm going to really focus on transferring this emotion. And I'm going to do this through a neuro-linguistic programming technique called future pacing and the use of tonality. All right. So future pacing is a technique where you're asking your prospect to imagine himself or herself in some future state. Now, that future state could be a positive or a negative. And so people will ask, well, in future pacing, should you focus on the positive? Not really. I mean, there's benefits to focusing on the positive. Imagine this working this way for you, Mary. Imagine this problem resolved. Imagine coming in one day and, like magic, this operating system's working, the software is doing its job, your team's more effective and more efficient. Now you're at the end of the year board meeting that you've got coming up, and you can walk into that board with certainty. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put Mary in this imagined future positive state. It works, but I can also future pace, and it's equally as effective to future pace Mary in some negative state. Imagine if you don't do this, Mary. Imagine if you come into this office after a long weekend and there's chaos and the operating system isn't working because somebody breached the security package because you didn't have a reliable system like ours. And now you have to go in front of the board and you have to explain why you made a decision to not act immediately to protect the company's assets. What do you think? So I can paint this future positive or this future negative through. So I'm going to give some more information. Remember where we are in this process. I've painted 4 corners. I've given her a little bit of information. I asked her to buy. She said no. I asked her, I got micro agreements. Does she like the idea? I deflected her objection. Now I'm going in for my second presentation. I'm giving her more information. And now, based on the more information I give her, now I'm going to future pace her. What does it look like? What does what I'm sharing right now actually look like played out in the scenario that she gave me in the intelligence gathering? This is why listening to the intelligence gathering and asking all the right questions in the right order with a scripted question, because if I have the right question and it's scripted to get me this answer that fills in the blanks for what I'm going to future pace, it all comes together. This is a strategic conversation. It probably is going to take you, I don't know, 3 months of practice in order to get this system fluid. And what we're going to do is we're going to work with you in giving you piece by piece by piece and asking you to work just on one piece. Like I said last week, just work on rapport building. Just work on rapport building. This week, just work on scripted questions and just take piece by piece by piece. It's a fluid process. It will stack one on top of the other. You'll find that the more you begin to practice just pieces of it, you'll find that one naturally flows right to the next. So we're gonna future pace them. And again, the purpose of future pacing is to amplify the emotion, right? It gets the audience, it gets the buyer to act faster, to make a decision with more certainty. So here's how it works. You know, I hear what you're saying, Mary, but let me ask you this. Do you like the idea? Like, does the idea make sense to you? Yeah, I like the idea. Exactly, because it really is a great opportunity. I mean, just imagine for a minute, Mary. It's Monday morning. The team's worked all weekend long on a really hard project. And as you come in the door, rather than, complaining about giving up their weekend, your team kind of stands up at their desk, gives you a round of applause as you walk in, because they know it was your leadership that got them through this critical project. Okay, so that's an example of me future pacing Mary. Blend this with more features and benefits of the program. Blend this with more credibility of the company. Blend this with me saying, and you know what, I'm going to be with you every step of the way. I mean, look, I can't even help myself. Look what I said just on the last slide, that we're going to walk you through this entire process. And then you're going to talk about some unique proprietary benefit, some differential between you and your competition, and future pace them at the same time. So every sales professional is going to have scripted future pacing statements for positive future states and for negative future states that uses the features and benefits of the previous statements that they've made. This is why scripting is really important. And listening to that intelligence gathering gives you the information that you can just kind of insert into the future pacing script. So now we've made this second presentation, right? So we've asked Mary to buy. Mary said no. We said, do you like the idea? Does the idea make sense to you? She says, yeah. I mean, I like the idea. It makes sense to me. He said, exactly. It's really great. Let me tell you why. Here's some more features and benefits of the product. Here's some more things about the company. Here's something more about me. Here's something unique about us that separates us from everybody else. And you know what? What's even more, Mary? Imagine this. And now I'm going to future pace Mary. And now what's Mary going to do? Mary is probably 50% of the time going to give me another objection. She's probably going to still give me another objection. But this one is going to be a little bit harder for Mary to give me the objection. She's getting there, right? She's getting there, but she's still not 100% certain. So we're going to expect at this point a welcomed objection. Now, 50% of the people say, you know what, I'm ready to go, right? So we're going to ask for the order. And in this point, Mary, 50% of the time, Mary's going to say yes. 50% of the time, Mary's going to say no. And so what we're going to do this time is we can't deflect, right? We can't say, well, do you like the idea, Mary? Does the idea make sense? That breaks rapport instantly because now she's thinking, what, you didn't listen to me before? So now we kind of have to go head on, right? We got to speak to this objection. So Mary says, let me think about it, right? I'm not ready yet. Let me just think about it. So saying that we're going to deal with it head on gives me the right to speak. So here's how it plays out. But again, in order to speak to a prospect's objection, you have to have rapport. You have to have authority in order to do that. Remember, authority is not power. You have to have rapport with the person. So the reason is let's say your prospect says, well, let me think about it. Or, you know what, it just doesn't seem like it's going to work for us, or it seems like that's going to take too long, or whatever the objection is. If you try to be right and win the objection argument, you might win, but you won't make the sale. You won't make the sale. This is why, there's people who will have what we call buyer's remorse. They'll buy, and then the next day just call back and say, hey, let's cancel the order. They'll usually do that through email because they felt kind of bullied or manipulated. We don't want them to say yes. We want agreement. Write that down. We don't want them to say yes. We want agreement. We want them to agree that, yes, this is exactly what I need. Yes, I've got this problem, and yes, you can solve it. I agree. I agree that this is the next best step for me. So we're going to give them here additional, logical benefits. We're going to begin to future pace emotional certainty. And when we address their objection head on, we have to do it with absolute certainty tonality. Okay. And so here's what could be a language pattern. Okay. Jim, let me speak to this directly because I've been doing this for a long time. And whenever someone tells me that they want to get back to me or that they want to think about it, they almost never do. Jim, it's not because they don't see value, because I know you see the value. It's because life shows up and they simply get busy and they go right back to their comfort zone. Let me just say this. So no matter what the objection is, I'm going to follow pretty much this same script. Jim, let me speak directly to this. Now I'm going to give a because I've been doing this for a long time. And whenever somebody says, I want to run it by the boss, whenever somebody says, now's not the right time, whenever somebody says, I don't have the money, and now I'm going to use this same language pattern. I'll have to adjust it, but I'll have it scripted. And notice the last sentence. And let me just say this. And now, once I say, and let me just say this, what do you think is going to happen? Boop. Now I'm going into the third loop. And the third loop is now where I'm qualifying. I'm going really for the close. So this is my third sales presentation, and in I come. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build emotional certainty as I enter into this third loop. At this stage, I'm going to give all the details of the program. I'm going to paint all the picture. I'm going to give everything about the program. I'm going to make my best case. I'm going to build on all the logical things that I've already shared. And now I'm going to build the emotional certainty. This is where I might roll out testimonials. This is where I might give, statistical data. And again, I'm not winging this. I'm going to have those points. I'm going to have those options. I might have 5 or 6 different options scripted based on where I am with Mary. And if I think, okay, what Mary needs to hear certainty from a buyer, I'm going to take a scripted testimonial. If I think, you know what, Mary's a C personality, Mary really needs facts and figures, I'm going to take a scripted data, script it out, data points that build the emotion of certainty in Mary. Okay. And so now I'm going to make this really solid, emotional, built on the logic case for Mary buying this. I already know she's already given me 2 objections, right? She's kind of given me 2 objections now. So I should know where Mary's leaning. I should know, when I got Mary about 70% of the way there, we're almost there, or wow, we're way behind here. And if you're way behind here at this point, it's not Mary's fault, right? It's because you probably didn't do something right in the intelligence gathering, okay? So now we're going to go for the close, right? And going for the close involves 2 things. It's one, going for the close. And the second is introducing maybe what we call lower action threshold. So let's take a look how this looks. So if you're confident that the prospect, Mary or Jim, is, they're ready to buy, then your job is to go for the close. Write that down. My job is to go for the close. I say this is because, with all due respect, people are afraid to sell. And it's a lot easier to stay in this channel of rapport where you and Mary are just hitting it off, where you're the authority figure. Who doesn't like that position? Where Mary is really looking at you as an expert, and it's just, who doesn't like that? And now all of a sudden, your job, though, isn't to have Mary like you. We want Mary to like us. We're going to do everything we can to keep rapport. Part of rapport is liking us. But what is our job? Our job is to help Mary make a decision that she should be making that would help her. That would help her. And so here's how it sounds. Mary, let's get you started today. And I promise the only problem you'll have is that you didn't start with me 6 months ago. Fair enough? So listen to the tonalities. Mary, let's get you started today. And I promise you, the only problem you'll have is that you didn't start with me 6 months ago. Fair enough? 3 tonalities there. 3 tonalities. Mary, let's get you started today. That's like an excited, declarative. Mary, let's get you started today. And I promise you, the only problem you'll have is that you didn't engage with me 6 months ago. Fair enough? So I'm going to absolute certainty, this voice of authority. I promise, it's a big word. I promise the only problem, because remember, we've been talking a lot about Mary's problem. The only problem you're going to have is that you didn't start with me 6 months ago. Fair enough? Reasonable, fair enough? Okay. So again, this is a piece of a closing script, right? Just a piece of one. If we sense that there's hesitation, if we sense that, Mary's 70% of the way there, but she's just not there. She's scared. She's got certainty, but she also has fear. Okay. We've got to help Mary along. And so what we're going to do is we're going to lower the action threshold. We're going to make it safe for Mary to make a decision. How about we do this, Mary? Let's get you started with just a minimal investment right now. This way, you can experience what it's like for us to work together, and then you can decide on the rest of the package later. Fair enough? So we're giving Mary an option. What's the importance of this? What, like, how could this work? Well, the only way this works is if you have a well thought out offer. You have to have a really well thought out offer that allows you to A, upsell in the future, and B, downsell in the present to get somebody started on what we would call the buyer's journey. For those of you who have already enrolled in the Mastermind Sales Bootcamp, we're going to give you a bonus. We're going to give you a bonus of a workshop with me in October. We're going to spend a Saturday together, and I'm going to show you the framework for an offer, how to create what we call a killer offer, an offer that could be upsold and downsold and has massive value and creates urgency in the mind of the buyer. And so if you've already enrolled in the mastermind group, that's coming. If you've been thinking about joining into the sales bootcamp and mastermind group, that's now a bonus that we're offering today. Okay. So in order to create a predictable result, you have to follow tested, proven model of scripting and the use of tonalities. And you got to follow the model in every single sales transaction because you've got to build the discipline of doing this. You've got to build the discipline of doing this. So again, I have a 16-hour sales masterclass that Holly Lane Smith and I created. You can get full access to that, lifetime access to that masterclass for $500. Lots of people have paid $1,000 for it, okay? And because you're part of this program, we're offering it for $500. Here's what's included. You're going to have a video recording of a live workshop teaching the sales process that Holly and I created, and we're teaching you pieces of. What you're getting right now is just like 45 minutes of a 16-hour program, okay? So you're going to get a video of us teaching the course. You're also going to get 16 hours of the complete course on audio. And there's a workbook that will guide you through. And again, you can have lifetime access to that for $500. For those of you that would like to have me and my team kind of do all the work with you, do everything with you so that you know you've got it right, what we're offering is a 2-day mastermind. To be honest, I offered a mastermind group earlier this year, and it sold out that quick. We were only going to do 4 groups. We ended up filling 6. I know that this mastermind bootcamp on sales is going to fill up. And so if you'd like to join, I really encourage you to act, okay? So you're going to come in with 2 days with me and my team. During those 2 days, you're going to walk away with a finished script, that will mark out all the different tonalities, that will have all the pacing, that'll include your offer, that's custom for you. You'll have that done. You'll also be able to practice in the conversation. We're going to role play where you're going to be selling your product and service to the people in the group, and they're going to be selling you. So you will play buyer and seller while me and my sales team are listening in, so that you know when you leave, you've got it right. And then we're also going to guide you through all the 9 different tonalities so that you know for sure how absolute certainty sounds from your lips. And you're going to have that because you're going to have trained ears. Myself, Holly, and the rest of our sales team are going to be there. Now, in preparation for that 2 days in January in Florida, we're also going to give you that 16-hour master class. Okay, so you're going to get the video recording, you're going to get the 16 hours, and you're going to get the workbook. But rather than you kind of going through that on your own as a self-study program, when you're enrolled in the boot camp, me and my sales team are going to do bi-weekly live calls, and we're going to take you through that 16-hour course during September, October, November, and December. So for 4 months before you come into the sales boot camp, you're going to learn this system. Okay. All those calls will be recorded and downloaded. In addition, we're going to give you the recording of all of these sessions so you have them as a quick reference guide. There's a bonus, and the bonus is that we're going to give you a virtual workshop with me where I'm going to help you create your offer that we will be scripting in January. So we're going to take all the guesswork out of it for you. All right. Because you're part of this program, you get the entire boot camp, you get the sales masterclass, you walk away with the script, you walk away with all the tonalities, you get the workshop bonus for $2,497. Everything that I talked about here that you see on the screen. It costs you absolutely nothing to talk to one of our, our team members. If you're thinking about doing this, go ahead and click on the link and just discuss, see what the options are. There's a payment plan. If you really want to just get this resolved once and for all, if sales have kind of been your nemesis, if you want to have confidence and certainty, if you want to begin the journey to kind of mastering this boot camp will absolutely do it for you. I guarantee it. Okay. So why don't we go ahead and we'll jump in. Oh yeah. I forgot. We are going to license to teach the, we're going to license to teach this sales course. If you'd like to learn how to be licensed to teach this content, send an email to info@paulmartinelli.net. info@paulmartinelli.net, and the subject line put sales program, and we'll get back to you. You have to be enrolled in the sales mastermind bootcamp in order to have the license, because how can you really go out and teach without having done it, right? We want you to go through the process, but we're going to license you to teach the course and to teach the mastermind program. Okay. So if you'd like to learn how to do that, you can do that as well. Let's go ahead and we'll go to Q&A. Stop share. I think I stopped share. Did I do it right, Megan? Am I good? Yeah. All right.
All good. Yeah.
Let me just ask everybody, how was today's session? Did you get some value out of it? Yeah. Right on. Right on. Good deal. Okay. So, I want to be able to do some Q&A. So if you've got some questions, Megan, will tell us what we need to do. Megan.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Yeah, that was great. So everyone, if you have a question, if you scroll over the screen, you will see either the participant tab is one way to do it. If you click on participants, there will be a little button that says raise hand, or there will be 3 dots that you can click on and it'll say raise hand there. And then another option is if you go to the reaction tab and you click on that, you'll see a button that says raise hand there as well. So while everyone's kind of figuring out how to do that, I am going to go ahead and start with the first question. So Paul, the first question we have is from Becky. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Becky to unmute, please.
Unmuted. Thank you for another great session. Really, this is the one that I was most looking forward to in the middle of negotiations of a big corporate deal for our nonprofit. So we're really excited about that. And I just have one question from last week that's just stuck with me. And it was Paul saying, do not overthink. And so I think I'm guilty of that because, being in a nonprofit down in the South, a lot of it is, the perception rather than it being a tax code, more of a religion. I have to, I feel like, I even say to people, I'm pathetically grateful. How can I thank you? It's like I'm profuse. And so I'm wondering from a nonprofit perspective and fundraising and relationship building, how to honor those or not seem like I'm just, pathetically grateful, although I am.
Yeah. First off, thank you. Thanks for being part of the program and jumping in. You can see it now, can't you, Becky? I mean,
kind of, but it's like there's that uncomfortable thing, like some things that you had said was commonality versus rapport. That's huge. I'm like, okay, because once just like being pathetically grateful, yeah. And I don't want to. I'm not groveling.
Yeah, but well, listen to the words. Words mean things. Words have vibration. Pathetic. Just let that hang. So I'm not suggesting that you're not grateful. I'm not suggesting that you're not thankful. I'm suggesting that you're not pathetically grateful, right? Or pathetically thankful. So I think there's a balance there. So maybe because I think, you make a great point. It is at some level about comfort. You're learning something new. So if you were going to go to the gym for the first time, let's say in 6 months, we wouldn't put somebody, on the elliptical machine for an hour, right? We put them on for 10 minutes. So here's what I'd like you to do. Practice just stepping it down one degree. So instead of saying I'm pathetically grateful, I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. And here's what I'd like you to do is I want you to change your tonality when you say it. Instead of like, I'm just saying I'm pathetically grateful. I want you to think of the word respect. I respect you so much and I'm grateful for your time. And if you'll think saying that statement, I really respect you and I respect the work you do. And I'm really grateful. You'll carry that tonality. So, I always, one of the things that we're going to teach you to do in the boot camp is we're going to teach you kind of the language pattern of the tonality. And if you can say the words, like I'm a reasonable person, you're a reasonable person, right? Fair enough. If you can say those words going into the tonality, you'll nail it. I hope that helps, Becky. Thanks so much. Right on.
Thanks, Paul. So next up, we have our friend Angela Hooper-Manyfield. So I'm going to go ahead and ask her to unmute.
Hey.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, Angela. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
Good. Doing well.
Hey, Megan and Holly. So my question is this. One of the things that I've started to do a lot more of is bid on contracts. And as you were walking through the presentation this morning, the thing that really resonated with me, because I know often organizations want what they call a capability statement or other kind of written resumes for that contractor to speak to their qualifications. So with this, when you were speaking about how in that first presentation, when you would tell them, something about the company, something about yourself, something about your program, maybe something that's special or unique. Is that same model duplicatable in those type of written formats? Because I was immediately thinking about, that's maybe that missing piece.
Yeah, thank you. And always great. You are such a big supporter of me and EL and great to have you. I think you've got to be careful because sometimes you only get one shot.
Right.
With these kinds of proposals, sometimes you only get one shot. And so if it's one shot, then you've got to give it. What I would encourage you to do is I would encourage you to write out what you're going to put in that box. And then I would look at every single one of those words and I would calibrate the words. Is there a better, more succinct word? Is there a higher value word that I could use, right? So because you really want to build as much certainty and as much value as you can. So if you think that this is like, maybe it's an introductory, it's the first step of an application, you might give enough information that gets them, okay, I'm interested, you qualify and you pass to the next level. If it's one and done, I think you've got to go in and you got to give it all. Okay. Right on. Thanks, Angela.
Thanks so much, Angela. Alrighty, Paul, next up we have Pat. So I'm going to go ahead and ask him to unmute, please.
Oh, thank you very much, Paul, for this presentation. This is really awesome. One of the things that I wanted to ask, selling from the stage, how do you shorten the buyer's journey from the stage? Because I had a presentation just this week, and I thought I nailed it. Everything was spot on when I was reading them and everything. But the biggest challenge I had was at the end, I thought people were going to be lining up and buying books and then taking advantage of the 25% discount that I was offering for the leadership plan. And nobody had to redo the selling by standing by the books and asking people if they're interested in all that. So where did I lose the people? Was it in the presentation or I just hadn't earned their sale yet? How do you shorten that buyer's journey when you're selling from the stage?
That is a great, thank you, Pat. That's a great question. Hey, Megan, let me just ask you real quick. Do we still have all the information, all the resources for ITO?
I believe so.
Okay. Why don't we do this? We're going to add ITO to this. Okay. So anybody who enrolls in the boot camp is going to get Influencing the Outcome, which is my master class on how to sell from the stage. Pat, I've sold literally millions, tens of millions of dollars from the stage. And there is a formula. It's part of this formula. But Pat, here's what I think. Here's where I think people go wrong. I think people go wrong when they're selling from the platform right from the beginning. I think one of the very first things you want to do as soon as you get out on stage and say, hello, my name is, you want to share with them that you're going to be sharing today one piece of a larger system. And you promise that for those people that would really like to master the whole system, you're going to give them a way to do so at the end of the presentation. If that presentation, let's just say, Pat, is 1 hour, 20 minutes, at least, as much as 30, but at least 20 minutes of that 60 minutes is the sales presentation. So the second mistake people make, the first mistake is that they don't tell the audience up front that what you're hearing is one piece of a system, and there's more coming, and that I'm absolutely going to sell you something today. Okay. I'm pathetically sure, Becky, I'm pathetically sure that I'm going to sell you something. Okay. So it's no surprise. The second mistake is they ambush the sale. They wait till the last 3 minutes and they say, okay, I'm almost out of time. So go back and grab the book. It's 25% off. Thanks so much. Everything I shared about more is in the book. Have a great day. And they ambush the sale. What you want to do is you want to have command of that stage. You want to have the book up and say, I shared. So, I shared with you that I would talk more about a way for you to take a next step. And so one of the things that I'm doing today is I've discounted my book by 25%. Jim in the back of the room, will you stand up? Everybody turn around and wave to Jim. Jim. So if you'd like to get a copy of the book, you're going to go back to, I'm in command of the stage. I'm not rushing it. Go back, see Jim, wave his hand, go back and see Jim. Jim will be able to be this. And when I'm done today, I'll be right back at the back of the table so you can ask any questions there. Let me share with you some of the benefits and you're going to open up the book. In chapter 1, I take you through this. And now, you're doing it right, Pat, when they're taking notes during your sales presentation. Like when you're selling them and you're teaching them, it's like the infomercial, right? Where they're actually learning while they're in the sales process. And again, what I'll do is for anybody if you've already enrolled, for those people who've already enrolled, as we unlock bonuses for the boot camp, you automatically get them. Okay. So for anybody who has already enrolled or does enroll, you're going to get the workshop with me on offers. We're going to do that in October. And you're also going to get the Influencing the Outcome seminar that I did that teaches, it's an 8-hour seminar that teaches the entire system, really thick book. As a matter of fact, this last week during the Q&A, I think it was 2 or 3 people who held up the book and said, they've sold tens of thousands of dollars using the ITO system. So hope that helps, Pat. Thanks.
Thank you for your question, Pat. Paul, next up, we have Dorothea. So I'm going to go ahead and ask her to unmute, please.
Hey, Dorothea. You might still be muted.
Dorothea, you might have to allow me. Yeah, there you go. Alrighty, Paul, we're gonna go to Marcia now, and then Dorothea. Oh, I think Dorothea is unmuted now. So
I'm here.
Okay.
Here. I actually have a success story to tell.
Oh.
So just from last week, I'm an endocrinologist here in Germany, and I was here last week, and the lady from Ireland said, "Oh, it's difficult. The Irish people are different," and he said it doesn't matter the nationality. And I actually, for another lady, you answered the question and you gave her a script to say that the services were previously free and now they cost money. So I translated it 1-to-1 to German. And in fact, the same thing happened for us. So some things we used to offer in clinics that were free are no longer free. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I made additional 5,000 euro just by doing this. And you know what? All the colleagues from around the clinics, they heard about it, and now they say, "Oh, we want you to hire you as a coach to to show us the skill." So, and previously I was not able to sell anything at all. So thank you.
Well done. Well, thank you. That's awesome. Fantastic. And, thank you for saying that, because again, you increase your likelihood of a sale 73% just by having a script. It's amazing. It's the most important thing. It's the most valuable thing you can do. And for most of us on this call, if you sold one or two extra, in your case, you sold a $5,000 deal, to have that script written by me and my team for 25. I mean, if you enrolled in the mastermind group, just to have that, it's worth $2,500. It's ridiculous. So thank you. Thank you for saying. All right.
Thank you so much, Dorothy, and congratulations.
Awesome.
Next up, we have Marcia. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Marcia to unmute, please.
Thanks so much. I see that Holly has responded to my question in chat, so I'll pass. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank
Good
you,
to see you.
Marcia. Alrighty, next up we have Beverly. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Beverly to unmute, please.
Hello, excuse me. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Beverly.
Hello. My question is, because even when you said the word buyer's remorse, I even got like a lump in my stomach, because sometimes I know I have done that, but I also don't want my, any potential client to have feel like they made a rash judgment. So how do you bridge that, making sure they don't feel like they made a rash judgment or have buyer's remorse?
Yeah, that's a great, I love that you're asking this, because it speaks right to integrity, doesn't it? It speaks to integrity. And, when all of us are in the long game, none of us are Bernie Madoff. We're not trying to do some Ponzi scheme and, slip away. We want to build our reputation, and we want to be in the game for a long time. And so I think by doing the intelligence gathering, by really uncovering where they are in the process, you've probably heard the saying, sales is something you do for someone, not to someone, right? And so if at any time during the process, look, I've had people who've called me up and want me to mentor them one-on-one, and in talking to them, I can tell that they haven't yet developed a discipline muscle to stick with what I'm going to give them to do. I know where they want to go. I know the work it's going to take, and I just don't think that they've got the discipline yet. And so rather than, sell them into the program because they really want to work with me, I'll say, you know what, why don't we do this? Why don't we put you in this program first? Why don't you take a study? And what I want you to do is, I want you to give yourself a command and follow through with it. I want you to say that you're going to do the Think and Grow Rich study as an example. You're going to do it in 90 days. And let's see, if you're able to do that in 90 days and you gave yourself a command and done it, then you'll know that you're going to have the discipline to go through this 6 months with me. Fair enough? And so I think it's in the intelligence gathering. But I do think, to your point, you also want to be listening all along, right? And the minute you feel like, you know what, this is not in this person's best interest, and I have kind of like an abort the mission language pattern, that says, as I hear you talk today, Mary, I'm just thinking that maybe we should go in this direction, and it's me changing directions. Thank you. Thanks so much. Great question, because it does speak right to the integrity question of sales.
Thank you, Beverly. Alrighty, next up we have Markel. So I'm going to go ahead and ask her to unmute, please.
Hi.
Hey, Markel.
So you talk about maintaining rapport, and I'm wondering, how do you tell a story without breaking rapport? So, I've always heard, facts tell, stories sell, and I'm wondering how you do that without getting off on a tangent and keeping that rapport.
Yeah, that's a great question. So you've got to make sure that the story's concise. You've got to make sure that you get right to it. I will typically force discipline on somebody to have a story be 1 minute long, which is really hard, That's so the use of words. What I encourage you to do is here's a great transition word, like just a language pattern. And all of us use it, but we don't think of it as much. It's let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. And if we can think of what our story is as an example, we can then take the meat of that story and reduce it to an example. So it's kind of a word game you have to work with yourself. It takes discipline. And the only reason why we would ever tell a story is if it absolutely built certainty. If it built commonality, and I think if you really look at most stories, what do? They build commonality. They don't really build certainty. And so I would think that, there's great times like when you're speaking on a platform, storytelling's great. You've got an hour. The dynamic relationship is different. Their audience, your speaker, and it's expected and welcomed. In a sales conversation, that's a totally different dynamic. Yeah. So I would think of this as, let me think of my story. Does my story build logical or emotional certainty? Does it absolutely fortify the benefit or feature of what I'm selling? And do I need to tell it as a story, or can I give it as an example? I hope that helps. And that again, and that's why thank you. And again, that's why scripting is just critical, right? It's critical.
Thank you so much for that question. Paul, next up we have David. So I'm going to go ahead and ask David to unmute, please.
Hello, how are we doing today?
Good, David.
From Fort Worth, Texas. Hey, Paul, I got a question. I know I've been struggling in closing my deal, some of the business coaching, and please give me an advice. How do we maintain the rapport in order for us to be doing the closing on the deals? I know this is going to be great for my team and myself. I'm sure I'll be there in January, but I just need to start going with this. And in 2 months, I'll be in a stage. So I want to make sure that I get all the pieces together and be able to start doing more closings.
Yeah, I think, first off, thanks for jumping in today and being with us. I think you just said it. I want to get the pieces. I want to get each piece and begin to put them together. And so how do you have the rapport when you go to close? You have it at the open, right? You begin and it's maintaining and building that rapport, and it's asking for micro agreements all along the process. Does that make sense? Sound fair enough? And so just like, does that make sense? And the person says, yeah, great. I'm going to drop in a bunch of these little, let me check and gauge where you are kind of micro agreements along the process, as I'm taking them through the system, I'm going to intentionally script in just sometimes where I can drop in or check in on the person to make sure that, I'm not off in Pluto, that they're tracking with me. And so I'll ask them, you tracking with me? Does that make sense? Any questions up until now? Does it feel good? Right? And so these are things where I'm listening for audible cues, or I'm looking for visual cues from them. And I want to make sure that I've got that rapport all the way through. And so I'd encourage you is, take each step as we heard, I think it was Dorothy who talked about just using one of the strategies, just scripted out the one language pattern. Take each piece first and play with it, and then add the next piece to it and see if you can get the transition right. It will feel clunky at first, right? It'll feel clunky because it's new. It's a new behavior. It's kind of like writing your name. If you're right hand dominant, take a pen and start writing your name with your left hand. It feels weird. You can do it, but it's not going to, it's going to be scribbly. It's going to be a little bit messy, and it's not going to feel comfortable. But if you keep doing it, at the end of maybe a month, you'll have the skill. it's worth being uncomfortable. It's worth the effort of this, because imagine if you're able to do this. Imagine if you're able to go into every sales conversation with confidence and certainty. Imagine if you really know and have command of this process, how much better you're going to listen to your client. You know, I mean, you're going to be able to be fully present because you're not going to be thinking about what you need to say. You're going to be really listening for not only the words, but the vibration, the energy, and the meaning of what they're saying. So I think, you just got to maintain, look at it piece by piece, chunk by chunk, use the strategy of dropping in. Does that make sense? Are you tracking with me now? How are we doing so far? Is this making sense to you? Great. And as long as I'm getting those cues and I intuitively I'm picking up that, yep, they're with me, keep going. Okay. Hope that, thanks again. Thanks for being part of it. Hope to see you in the mastermind group. I mean, if you're leading the team, absolutely, you should be doing this.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your question, David. Alrighty, Paul, next up we have Sarah. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Sarah to unmute, please.
Hello.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi. There was a gentleman that already asked a question that gave me a little bit of my answer, talking about being from the stage and wanting to know how to kind of do those closes and things. My question is, I've got a thing coming up for a Rotary that will be for 40 minutes. So it's going to give me a pretty good segue into doing like lunch and learn. So I'll have a couple of good points about it, but to present to them a future event so that I can get interest for people to want to do something in the future, would you suggest asking them for a complimentary again? Or how would you go about that? I kind of hate to do that, but if it got me in another door, eventually you're going to talk to enough people that somebody's going to be like, well, you should be getting paid for this. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure how you gauge that.
Yeah, I think as long as you give them a because, again, thanks for jumping in. I think as long as you give them a because, right? If there's a reason why. And so here's one, you can say, because one of the ways I introduce myself to the business community is I offer these complimentary trainings.
Right.
I've found that by doing this, it really allows me to meet the organization on common ground where they don't feel threatened at all. And so if you or your team would like to have me come in, just go ahead and fill out the form. You see, that would be the language pattern I would use. So I would use the because strategy. Oh, let's unmute Megan. Let's unmute Sarah real quick. I'm sorry. Hold on. You might have to accept her unmuting. Hold on.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Oh,
No,
okay.
I'm saying in that way, you also justify the fact of why you're doing it for a complimentary. You're just not doing it for free for everybody forever. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, because yeah. Well, thank you, Sarah. Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Because one of the ways that I introduce myself to the business community is through these complimentary. So perfect. Well done. Thank you. Great question. And again, for those of you that enroll in the mastermind boot camp, not only are you going to get the 16-hour masterclass, and you're going to get the workshop on the offer, I'm now going to also give you my Influencing the Outcome program. That you'll be able to track. It's an 8-day, it's an 8-hour program that teaches you an entire system of how to sell from the stage. I've sold literally tens of millions of, probably $100 million if I were to sit down and add up, from the stage. There's an art and science to it. Now, what's interesting is you can take this framework and hang it right on it and you'll see it all the way through, but it's done in a different way when it's live on stage. So, because the live on stage has a little bit more performance to it. So, okay, go ahead, Megan. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Paul. All righty, next up we have Carlos Cabanas. I'm going to go ahead and ask him to unmute, please.
There it goes.
Hey, Carlos.
Hey, Paul, how are you doing this morning?
Good, bud. How are you?
Great. I'm doing great. My question is, I do network marketing. So we have a product that isn't finished yet, but that will give people the opportunity to earn a residual income, even if they're not in network marketing. So when I'm painting the four corners, how do I say, this was supposed to be ready in March, and then it's supposed to be ready in April, and now we're in August and it's in beta testing, but it's probably going to be in beta testing 90 days or so. How do I deal with presenting that as this is definitely going to happen and it's definitely going to be something you want?
I think what you want to say is, one of the beautiful things that I really love about this company is that they are simply results driven. They're not going to launch. As a matter of fact, this product was supposed to release in April. And because it didn't meet their highest standards, rather than trying to rush to a market like so many other companies do. I mean, look at Apple. People stand in line for a phone that they know isn't going to work when they get it. This company is absolutely committed to making sure that when they launch this, and that's why I want to position you now, Carlos, to be right at the front of the line when they're ready to go. Let's get you enrolled. Hope that helps, Carlos. Hope that helps. Sounds like an interesting, I love multi-level marketing. I think it's a fantastic model. Sounds like an interesting one. Okay, go ahead, Megan.
Thanks, Carlos, and thank you, Paul. Alrighty, next up we have Brenda. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Brenda to unmute, please.
Okay. Good morning.
Hey, Brenda. Good morning. Big smile.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. I'm really excited. So I wanted to start off saying, hi, Paul. The reason for my question is.
I love it.
Well, I have two questions, and my first question is, what is a good time frame to follow up with a potential client so that I don't sound so desperate to connect with them? So what's a good time frame from the first time we talk to the next conversation?
Yeah.
So that's one question.
Well, let me ask you a question. What's the price point?
Okay.
Or are you selling them a $500 product or a $10,000 product?
Let's start off with the $500 product.
Okay, so you're within 48 hours.
Okay.
So let me give you a call Monday at noon. Right. So let me give you a call Monday at noon. Very, very casual. So let me give you a call. Based on everything we talked about today, Brenda, why don't I give you a call Monday at noon? And we'll finalize, all the details, answer any questions you've got. Fair enough?
Okay. And so what about that? Because you threw out another larger number. So if it was a larger package, what would that follow-up look like?
If it took a larger financial commitment, I'm under the assumption that there might be some other considerations. Price not being one of them. I'm under the assumption that, let's say this was a $10,000 package. I would imagine that they have to adjust their calendar to assimilate the start of the new program. They have to get with other departments maybe. And so that might, I want them to have enough time to do whatever work we've agreed that they're going to do. Now, what I'm not going to do, Brendan, just say, well, let's get together, a week from today without giving them some assignments to do,
Okay.
So why don't we meet this time next week? And by then, is it okay? Can we agree that you'll have spoken to the department heads? You'll have, a starting process and the software requirements. Fair enough. Does that give you enough time to do it? Yeah, good. Okay. So let's say this time, next week at 2:00. Fair enough. Great. I'll tell you what.
See, I felt like I was on the other end. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My second question is, because I'm such a solution-based person, and I like working with people who are ready to rock and roll and let's go. And so, but you also said to allow the client to stay in the pain for a while. My mind is going, no, let's get out of it, right? So how do I help myself to stay connected with them in the pain process? And typically is there like so that it doesn't stretch out too long? What's a good gauge?
Yeah. So in the sales process, remember, I'm not talking about days. I'm talking about minutes. Okay. So in the sales, let's say I'm doing intelligence gathering and I'm asking you a question and you say, one of our biggest problems is like right now we've got a breakdown in communication. Jim isn't talking to Mary and there's infighting and it's really affecting things. I don't want to jump in and say, you know what, we can solve that. I've got a great program. I don't want to solve that problem right now. I want to say, tell me more about that problem. Tell me more. What have you invested in so far to work with Jim and Mary? I want to antagonize that. I want to uncover. I want to peel that back. I want to let them sit in that pain. Okay. So we're not talking about, you're letting somebody sit in pain for hours. And again, let's just talk about what pain is. You know what I mean? We're not, right? We're not hurting anybody, right? We're talking about let them sit in the uncomfortable, problem that they have and understand the consequence of that problem, right? One of the hardest things I learned and this wasn't necessarily in sales, this was in personal growth and development. Sometimes the very best thing you can do for the starving person is let them go hungry another day. Is not necessarily solve their problem. And so when you're talking to Jim or Mary, Paul Martinelli is of the opinion that they should be buying what you're selling. Let's just think about this for a moment. Somebody sees an ad on Facebook and they click on the ad. That's intention. They read the landing page. They fill out the form. That's intention. They get an email that says schedule an appointment. They click on the calendar. They schedule the appointment. That's intention. They show up to the appointment on time. This is a qualified buyer. This is why it drives me nuts when salespeople say, well, the leads stink. No, they don't. You've got to get better. If somebody's on the phone with you, they're qualified buyers. They're qualified buyers. For the most part, they're qualified buyers. Now, some of them maybe not, but I would think that probably 90% of the people you speak to are qualified. And part of qualifying them is getting them to make the decision they should be making. And people won't make a decision unless they're in enough pain to change. I hope that helps, Beverly. Right on. I hope to see you in the masterclass. I really do. Hope to see you. Right on.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Alrighty, next up, Paul, we have Roos. So I'm going to go ahead and ask to unmute.
Oh, right on. I've been watching Roos drive. I'm thinking, are we going to get to Roos?
I wish I was going to get there. Fair enough.
Fair enough. Well done.
Thank you for sharing your valuable time with us, Paul. I really appreciate that.
You bet.
I'm a self-employed therapist, and I have a crack in my paradigm. I'm doing something wrong. I feel I'm losing integrity when I'm trying to sell someone. Does that make sense?
Well, yes, unfortunately.
Yeah. See, I have a crack.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think it goes back to, if you really believe that what you have would help someone, it's the highest, most moral thing you could do is provide that person a solution. And so you are right. It is a paradigm that needs to be broken. And so I think taking the time and the energy to learn, first off, a system and process, because as you learn a system, you're going to see that, if you just look at our system, every single piece of our system is based on integrity. That the person moves to the next phase. And if they don't move, it's because they're not qualified and we immediately abort the call. We're done. That's it. If it doesn't serve them, we're out. So I think learning the system will help break that. But the other thing I think what you might want to do is, and most of us never do this. And here's an exercise that I think you could and probably should do this week. I would identify 5 people that have bought services from you. And I would ask them for 10 minutes of their time. And I would ask them, could they please tell you the value that working with you added in their life? And what I want you to do is I want you to write down what they say and believe them and recognize, and then just ask them this: had I not provided you an opportunity to buy from me, would you still have the problem? All right, Ruth. I hope to see you in our mastermind group. Well done.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Alrighty, Paul, next up we have Cindy. So Cindy, I'm gonna go ahead and ask you to unmute, please.
Yeah, just so you know, Megan, we're gonna stop at 10 o'clock. We'll stop at the top of the hour. Okay.
Sounds good.
Good morning. My question for you this morning is regarding intelligence gathering, especially with someone that I already am familiar with or know personally. I don't want to get in a position where I'm answering the questions for them, but I also don't want to ask questions that they know I already know the answer to. So how do I direct that information gathering?
Cindy, brilliant. Perfect question, because you want to break rapport. Ask somebody you know a question that you should know the answer to. So, if I were, asking Andrew Mins, so Andrew, are you married? have any Andrew's laughing, have any kids? Like, what are you nuts? Right? You break instant rapport, right? So I think what you want to do is you want to state the obvious, and then you want to have a language pattern that asks permission to go a little bit more. So in this case, you might say, hey, Andrew, I know you and I have had just a great relationship. And I feel like I've got a lot of the information I would normally need to gather in order to be able to help someone. But there are some parts that are kind of missing for me that I want to ask. And if asking any of these kind of violates our friendship, please just tell me right away, because what's more important to me is our friendship than me, having one single new deal. And if it does, I've got other colleagues I'll be glad to refer you to. Fair enough? So that language pattern says, look, I'm acknowledging that you and I are friends and we've got a lot, and I'm going to need to ask you some things. Is that okay? And it's quite okay. I'm giving you permission. If it gets uncomfortable, just say so. And I'm going to still help you. I'm going to refer you to somebody who can help you. I hope that helps, Cindy. Great question. Good catch. Because you can see how you can break rapport, right? Like, so you have a wife and kids. Right on. Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Paul. Alrighty, next up we have Kathleen. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Kathleen.
Hey, there you are, Kathleen.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much. I always enjoy getting to share the wisdom you impart. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And then the purpose of my question is, in my industry in sales, I need to learn a very new skill set, because in our current environment, the leads are now generated as web leads. So the initial contact is you have an internet address and maybe a phone number, and you've got to now reach out and try to build rapport. So what are some, I guess, realistic, I tried to write it down, realistic or reasonable ways to engage with them and try to.
Yeah, that's great. And I think what we want to do is we want to reach out with a qualifying question. And we want to use that kind of opening statement, the reason for the email. The reason for my email is you responded to, some web form. I wanted to make sure that this was accurate and that you have an interest in this. If you do, I'm ready to kind of meet with you. If not, no problem. So I would keep it really short, really concise. The reason for this email is, if this is true, if you've got this problem, I stand ready to help you. If not, no problem. Okay. Yeah. Harder to do though, isn't it? When it's one of those kind of web, and more sales teams are going to those. And, I'm of the opinion, pay the extra 80 cents a lead and, qualify them, get a name and get a phone number and get some information from them so that you can really speak to them. Okay.
Thank you, Kathleen. Alrighty, Paul, next up we have Bella. So I'm going to go ahead and ask her to unmute, please.
Hey, Bella.
Hi, Paul. My question has to do with the sales. I have a TV interview, and they're only going to give me a couple of minutes. So I mean, how would I incorporate all this into like 2 minutes? And a big part of that is for this interview to be successful, because after that I'm going to send out a press release, and I want to have that on my website so they can already see me talking on TV stations. So maybe somebody else will invite me to talk on theirs as well.
Yeah, well, congratulations. Well done. Here's what I've learned, and I learned this years ago when I was doing a lot of radio interviews and TV interviews when I was traveling with Curtis Sliwa with the Guardian Angels, and we were on, the evening news or newspaper or, live radio. And, what I've learned from one of the news personalities was never answer the question you're asked. Say what you want to say, especially if it's recorded for later, because they'll edit it. But if it's live, so if they ask you a question, you can very gingerly acknowledge the question and then say what you want to say. And if you listen to really sharp pros who are doing interviews, you'll notice they almost never answer the question direct. They're saying what they want to say. They're speaking their agenda. And that's a really good strategy. Now you have to do it in an elegant way. So I would be utilizing the tool here of deflecting. So just like we would deflect the objection, where I would say, that's a great question. And, in addition to that question, many people ask this. And now I'm going to restate a question that I want to answer, and I'm going to give the answer to my question. Now, that's a really great question. And, in addition to question, a lot of people ask this as well. And then you give the answer you want. Also, I found in most of these shows, it's not 60 minutes and you're, Mike Wallace is trying to get you a gotcha. If you can spend, some time with the producer and say, hey, look, here's in order, your goal here is to entertain and inform your audience. These are the questions that I found that most of your audience is going to want answers to, and give them, the questions you want asked. Because remember, their goal is to have an interesting interview, not to play gotcha. It's not 60 minutes, right? So that's what I would do. So well done. Thank you, Bella.
Thanks, Bella. Alrighty, Paul. I know we have 2 minutes till 10, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the next person, which is Joe Whip. So I'm going to go ahead and ask her to unmute.
Great. Hey, Joe.
Hey, I couldn't get it to unmute. Hey, hi.
Hey, hi. How are you?
Thank you. Fabulous. Thank you very much. My question has to do with when your program is new and you're talking about the 4 corners, and when you are the company, how do you apply that to what you're teaching us?
Yeah. If you are the company, then rather than kind of, talking more about the company, you can talk about your philosophy of business. I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years. And, one of the values that I've learned is being able to do. And so I'm going to talk about the value that I've learned and how I operate my team. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because I mean, I'm definitely flying solo right now, and I've created a new program, and I feel very confident that what I have to offer has huge, immense value.
Yeah. So in this case, you're going to talk about the value of the program. You're going to talk about something that's unique and special about it. And you're going to talk about your journey. and how as a businesswoman, you've been able to translate your values into working with other people, and that you've put those values into this program. Make sense?
All righty.
Okay.
All righty, Paul.
We
We are
got
at the
one
top
more?
of the hour.
Can we get one more in? Let's, and I'll tell you what, if you've got a question, just put your name in, just type your first name in the chat. And if there's enough of them, we'll do another Q&A this week. So let's say if you've got a question and you'd like to, have a question answered on the topic, go ahead and just put your first name in the chat. And if there's enough of them, we'll go ahead and do another Q&A like we did last week. Okay. Go ahead, Megan. Who we got?
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Next up, we have Marilyn Neubauer. So I'm going to go ahead and ask her to unmute, please.
Right on.
Hi, Paul.
Hey, Marilyn, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for this awesome training, and I plan on coming to boot camp.
Right on. Thank you.
My question is, next week I'm doing a 90-minute session based upon my book, My 3 Miracles, The Journey. But my goal is, I'm going to be focusing on their journey, but my goal is to get them to want to enroll in my 8-week course coming up in October. So my question is, how much time should I spend on my script about my upcoming 8-week course?
Yeah, probably 20 to 30 minutes.
Okay.
So what you might want to do is you might want to say, hey, look, today's presentation is a piece of some of the strategies that I talk about in my book. And as I go through today, I promise I'm going to share with you the other fundamentals of the program and a way for you to be able to be guided through them with me. And then as you shift in your teaching, you're going to say, here are the 8 principles all laid out. And let me show you what we're going to be doing in this 8-week course. So in week 1, we're going to be focusing on think. And you're going to highlight, you're going to paint the 4 corners on each one of these. You're not going to give them the whole batch. You're going to just say, in week 1, here's something unique. What's that? If you had to think of these 8 points, whenever you've taught them in the past, when do people go, ooh, when do people grab a pen and say, I want to write that? Can you say that again? Those are the points you want to bring out here. In week 2, we're going to talk about what's the aha moment in week 2? What's the aha moment in week 3? And that's what you're going to, and so you can see how when we put all of these pieces together, it creates this kind of transformation. And if you'd like to walk, it's kind of what I've done in this program, right? I've said, you've got to have a script, you got to have these things. And you know what? If you'd like to have me and my team do it with you, come into this boot camp. We're going to give you the master class. We're going to do live calls leading all the way into it. We're going to give you a resource on how to get your offer. We're going to give you how to sell from the stage. We're going to give you 2 days live. And so I've highlighted each of the pieces and I've talked about the importance of each around teaching those pieces though as well. Make sense? Yeah. So in very much so, kind of the way that these 4 workshops are modeled is kind of what you're going to do. I would think that most people here don't feel like this has been a big sales pitch today or a big sales pitch yesterday. There's enough meat and learning that they feel like, wow, this was of value. And yes, he took the opportunity to sell, but he's got to. But it was worth the trade. I was willing to, watch the commercial in order to get this show. Make sense? Right on. Thank you, Marilyn. So again, let me just say this as we go. Again, if you're not ready to make a full commitment, but you'd like to have the whole process, there's a 16-hour course. It's $500. It includes a live presentation, a video of a live presentation Holly and Lane-Smith and I did teaching the process, plus the 16-hour teaching of the program on audio and a workbook. You can enroll in that for $500. If you'd like to be guided through that course with me and my sales team for 4 months through live calls, and then come in and spend 2 days with me and my team live and let us write your script with you so that when you're done, you've got the script, you've got where the tonalities are, you've got the pacing, it's all done and you're ready to go started. We'd love to have you join the mastermind. And honestly, the last time we did a mastermind group, It sold out. This will as well. And this is really the last time of this year that I'll be doing something like this where you can learn directly from me in this kind of environment. This is the last time in 2021. And really, I don't think I'll be doing it much in early 2022. So would love to have you come in and be part of this program. Megan and Holly, thank you. My whole team, thank you. And thanks all of you guys for giving up your Saturday and being with me. Don't miss next Saturday. Tonality. It is awesome. And you're going to get to hear other people do it. And we're going to unmute some of you and have you guys do it on camera so you can know that you've got it right. Okay. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Holly. Thank you, everybody. Be well. God bless. Bye-bye.